Rookie quarterback DTR's first road start in Denver, a difficult place to play against a Denver Broncos team that is showing big signs of life. 4 straight victories. Crossover Thursday. Jeff Lloyd, Sayre Bedinger of Locked On Broncos starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is crossover Thursday ahead of week 12 of the 2023 NFL season. The Denver Broncos and the Cleveland Browns battling for some playoff position, which is very, very exciting for these two fan bases. Considering all that's gone on the last handful of years, I'm Sayre Bedinger, co-host of the Locked On Broncos podcast, and he is Jeff Lloyd, host of Locked On Browns, and we're excited to be talking about this matchup with huge implications for the remainder of the season. Jeff, I know obviously it's been a crazy year for the Cleveland Browns with injuries and still the defense kind of enduring through it all and carrying this team. For the Denver Broncos, it's been a tale of two halves of the first 10 games of the season. A horrible first half and a really, really fun and good second half where now they've won 4 straight games coming into this matchup. I'm excited to get to chat with you about how the Browns have been doing. Dorian Thompson-Robinson kind of coming in. It wasn't his debut, obviously, but kind of his coming out party. So what is the biggest storyline for the Cleveland Browns going into the Mile High City here in week 12 of the 2023 season?
Well, I mean, first things first, you talk about obviously Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and to save time here, obviously DTR. And it only took me 4 months to learn the kid's name, and then he never played, and then all of a sudden he was back in the limelight. But this would be the first road start. And obviously, we all know Denver, obviously, the altitude's a whole different ball game just as far as getting yourself acclimated to play out there. Certainly when the Broncos are successful, it is one of the more difficult places to play within the NFL. We all saw that, obviously Sunday Night Football. But I think it was different for what they had to do against Pittsburgh Steelers. The Browns have their issues playing against odd front defenses. And, when they see Baltimore, they see Pittsburgh, obviously twice every season. And they knew the emphasis they were going to have to put in this past Sunday. And ironically enough, it was, their 4th and 5th tackles for most of the game. They were able to have DeJuan Jones basically come in and close out the game. But the emphasis was, short drops, get the ball out quickly. And it was, everything was under 2.5 seconds for DTR. And to his credit, he did a good job following the script. And this has been funny because this has been something that's always gone on here with whatever quarterback has played for Coach Stefanski is you'd like to see the team get more vertical or at least attempt more shots down vertical. Obviously, you have, bigger chunk plays, obviously opportunities for penalties. Trying to play station to station baseball and football is really difficult. Then you try to put together 12, 13 play drives. It allows for, more negatives, whether it's penalties, obviously a loss of yardage play, this, that, and the other thing, turnovers. But it'll see if they start to open things up for him a little more. They have a lot of faith in DTR. He was a quarterback that they met with throughout the entire draft process. So it wasn't a surprise that, when it came around that they selected him, it was a guy they had a lot of interest in. They felt he has a similar skill set to Deshaun Watson as far as being a guy who can run the ball, accurate passer, had one of the highest recorded throwing velocities at the combine in history. So the kid's got the goods. Ended up being a 5th round pick. I and many others felt probably should have gone a little higher than that. So to be that maturation, the run game kind of failed them last week. They'd like to get that going again because, you always talk about a rookie quarterback, what can be its best friend. Obviously, good defense, a solid run game. The Browns obviously have the good defense, and that's been something that's, been a big, big bullet point for them this entire season. But, they know that it's, Deshaun's not coming back. It's not like the other times where it was PJ Walker and it was DTR and it was just, hey, let's plug in the holes until, number 4 is back. He's not coming back this time. So you bring in a Joe Flacco. And I mean, I don't know what the actual purpose is with there. Deshaun Watson's going to be out in LA for a while. He had his surgery, but he's going to stay out there as far as physical therapy, begin the rehab process, this, that, and the other thing. So maybe just getting a guy with legit experience in the room. I mean, if you needed to, if there ever came, a time in the 4th quarter, you were down 10 with 8 minutes to go, Joe Flacco can still throw the ball. He can't really do much else at, agility wise. He's not going to help you. He's not going to be able to do much with his legs. So it was interesting. They made the move, But I think their ideal thought process here is to just, hopefully amp up DTR and just get him a little bit more and more comfortable, a little bit more and more successful with each week. And then just kind of, if they do make the playoffs, just kind of, play it as it comes when they get there.
Yeah, they have a defense that I think if you can just get to the dance, I mean, anything can happen, right? With a defense that good, and you just need your quarterback to manage a game. We saw the Philadelphia Eagles win a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. I mean, he played his part in that, but obviously the defense was the thing that really carried them. So I'm really excited and looking forward to finding out this weekend whether or not the Denver Broncos can keep it going. I mean, it's been not necessarily the ball bouncing your way every single game in this winning streak. I mean, they beat the Chiefs pretty good. They played a really good game against the Packers, but it's been a couple of coin flip games between the Broncos and the Bills now and the Broncos and Vikings this past weekend. Can they keep this winning streak going? Can they improve offensively enough to the point against a team where, hey, this is not an ideal game where you need to get right offensively? Certainly, but the Broncos have been showing some signs of progress. I know that doesn't always get reflected in the scoreboard, but this is an offense where you're seeing things start to come together. You're seeing one week it's Jerry Jeudy making the plays, and Cortland Sutton's been stacking weeks on top of each other. The running game up until this game against Minnesota had been really clicking. The offensive line playing very well, and of course, everybody's favorite topic when it comes to the Broncos, Russell Wilson managing the game very well at the quarterback position. Honestly, he's not lighting it up in terms of he's not throwing for 300, 350 yards a game, but Russell's making good decisions with the football, even to a fault at times where he'd be willing to take a sack that maybe he doesn't need to necessarily. So it's a risk averse offense in many ways, but at the same time, it's been working and you can see there's opportunities there. There's been openings. So what I said to Cody in our pregame episode, Jeff, is that I feel like the Broncos need to be they can't be afraid going up against this Browns defense. And of course that can be, taken one way or the other, but what are your thoughts as you look at the Broncos coming into this matchup offensively? Is this a situation where you feel like the Browns just immediately pin their ears back, or do you feel like the Broncos, if they take some shots early on, what's the vibe over the course of the season for the Browns defense as far as where teams have taken advantage of them?
Look, there's been teams who move the ball on them, and there's been teams who put up points against them. Indianapolis Colts, not a great football team. Baltimore Ravens, obviously a good football team. They've had, and that's probably the impressive one is probably the Raven game because they took some shots to the mouth, and then all of a sudden Lamar Jackson held them to one completion in the fourth quarter, allowed their team to come back, rally, and win that game on the road. So it's not like they're just basically just dominating to the point where they're suffocating teams and you're getting them only basically to roll over and die. Like the Cardinals, obviously Clayton Tune wasn't a fair matchup. Kenny Pickett last week, and look, whatever the issue was, and it was both of them. Obviously, Kenny Pickett's just not playing very well. Offensive coordinator was doing him no favors. You have a first round quarterback at his second year who's going to lose that deal. The offense coordinator is going to lose, not the quarterback. But the thing with Russ is, yes, Russ is improving, and I think there's people who, and I'm one of them, and I think you have to come to the realization is he ever going to be the Russell Wilson that was continuous talk for a league MVP, continuous talk as far as team that was going to the Super Bowl every year, and maybe he's not, but that doesn't mean he's still not a damn good quarterback who has a ton of experience. And I think that was the thing that people were getting, a little confused with as far as where to read Russ was is he making mistakes because he's just not playing within himself? Because Russell Wilson never made mistakes like this. Now you bring up, hey, I'm going to eat this ball right here. We're going to punt it. I'll let the defense dig us out of this hole, and then hopefully we'll get it right on the next drive. That's obviously smart play. That is things that Russell Wilson has done. And the other thing is the miraculousness and the craziness and the elusiveness of what Russ used to be just might not be there anymore. And it's fair. I mean, people get older, so you have to rely more, obviously, on your experience, obviously your brains, your football knowledge, which may not look as great, but the team has won 4 games in a row, which is obviously 10 times more important than anything else. You certainly look, Cortland Sutton, obviously, he's making big time catches, and he's not, whether it's putting up great statistical outputs every week, it's not matter. He's coming up big in big situations. Jerry Jeudy, one week you get a great game, the other week maybe the involvement's lacking. But these are all talented players, and that's the thing. And, as far as, the Browns defense, you go out there and look, this is supposed to be where things are getting easier for the Browns. We knew the first 6 games were going to be really difficult. Then you were getting into Pittsburgh round 2, Baltimore round 2. But this 7-game stretch here, and look, Denver's, obviously on the road is a difficult opponent. Jacksonville at home could be a tough opponent. But this is supposed to be the sweet spot where the Browns are supposed to eat now. And maybe go ahead and win 5 out of 7, maybe win 6 out of 7 and kind of shock the AFC, possibly the AFC North. But you can't sleep on this one. And that's been the thing, because everyone in that locker room, players, coaches, front office, it's been about what do we got to do to go 1-0 this week. And it does get cliche-ish. It certainly does. But it looks really good when you're 7-3 and you've won games with 3 different quarterbacks. You've had 3 different quarterbacks, obviously leads you on a game-winning drive. That's when it doesn't look cliche. It looks like it's working.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about best on best in this game. I think offensive line of Denver versus defensive front of the Cleveland Browns, as well as a number of other matchups within this matchup here on this Crossover Thursday episode, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Browns. The football season is in full swing, but basketball season is also here, and you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. And for example, you could take LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. You want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill or comedian Andrew Schultz? Well, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. And PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Russell Wilson, he's got 6 multi-touchdown games this year, so maybe you want to take Russell Wilson for more than a touchdown pass. Or how about looking at star receivers Amari Cooper for the Browns or Cortland Sutton for the Broncos going for more than 55 receiving yards each? Go to the prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. As we continue our special crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Browns, want to give a huge shout out and say thank you to all of our everyday listeners out there, the everydayers. Jeff, we love and appreciate all of them. And from us of the Broncos country, we give a mile-high salute, but we're so thankful and so grateful to every single one of you that chooses to make Locked On Broncos or Locked On Browns your first listen of the day, every single day, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it's your team every day. You can listen free and available anywhere that you find podcasts, as well as you can watch on YouTube. And we're so grateful for every single one of you that chooses to do so. Jeff, I kind of teased it before we started this segment, but a little best on best is what I'm most excited for. I'm interested to hear your perspective on this. When I say best on best, I'm talking Broncos offensive line against the Cleveland Browns defensive front that has been causing problems all year. You and I were talking about it off the air just a little bit about how improved that, especially the interior is. But I think this is a really good matchup within the matchup. 2 units that are playing really good football here at the midway or a little after point of the season.
Well, for the Browns, look, defensively, it came so quickly. And look, you hire Jim Schwartz to run your defense. We all have been making the joke that Jim Schwartz said basically, yes, here's my demands, and basically it was players in free agency that he absolutely thought he needed to have. They basically hit and got him basically everything he needed. Not only did you sign Agbo Okoronkwo, who's been an outstanding addition for them. Post draft, you go out and you make a move for Zadarius Smith. You brought in Dalvin Tomlinson. You made a move late in the summer for Shelby Harris. Obviously, Denver Broncos fans very familiar with Shelby's play. Maurice Hurst, one of the most underrating signings of the entire offseason. Here's a guy whose entire career has basically just been marred in injury, and he's at the healthiest he's ever been and the most successful that he's ever been in the NFL to this point. They spent a top 100 pick on a defensive tackle. Hasn't even gotten addressed yet because that's how well the defensive tackles have been playing. The linebacking unit is solid. The secondary, there's could be a hiccup there. Juan Thornhill was out last week, did not return to practice here on Wednesday. Rodney McLeod was a fantastic rotational safety who played all three levels as far as around the line of scrimmage, could handle tight ends, could play on the roof safety, and he is now out for the season. They did combat that by signing veteran Duron Harmon to the practice squad today. So they just, even when a hole opens up, they find a way to really, really fill it in. But they've just been so, and it started week 1, it started week 2, and usually it doesn't. Like, offenses can pick up pretty quickly. Defenses, it doesn't usually work that way. It's, you can't, practice doesn't give you the same thing as game experience does. You need to see somebody do something 10, 12 times till you realize, hey, that's their tendency. That's usually how they play that. So even though I'm coached to do it this way, I might have to take a half yard in my split, this, that, and the other thing. But they're all veterans. They're all talented. You look obviously across the ball at Denver, you have Russell Wilson, who's, just a great established veteran, one of the smartest quarterbacks that's probably ever played in the NFL. You respect the wide receiving core. Williams just seems to get, what I noticed from Sunday night is here was a guy that was out almost a complete year, and everybody was so nervous about the injury. It seems like he's getting a little bit more back each week. So you get a little more wiggle, a little more juice with the fact that he loves to lower his shoulder. He's got no issues with that. Defensive side of the ball, they've certainly gotten better once they figured out the cornerback situation. Patrick Surtain versus Amari Cooper should be a really, really nice day. My guess is maybe you won't see many balls thrown that way, because if I was smart, I would probably just let those two go at it, and I'll play 10 on 10 with everything else that's going on. So you just see the way it all works out here. But, they're hot, Denver. Obviously, Cleveland is hot coming into this game as well. But Denver does have the advantage. Obviously, the Browns got to go out there. It's the altitude issues. It's just a different place to play. Again, the Broncos are good. Crowd is more involved. They will be there for all 60 minutes. And this is something that could be an issue with the Browns going into this. And it probably qualifies as a matchup. Is the Browns have been playing 60-minute games now for a pretty consistent basis. The 49ers, the Colts, the Seahawk game, the Cardinals was obviously a laugher. The Ravens went 60 minutes. Obviously last week against the Steelers went 60 minutes. So, for a team that's put in a lot of time, and, not that it is an excuse, but it could be an issue, is this could be a tired team heading into a place, obviously, again, where it's not so easy to play. Obviously, the altitude, it affects, there are guys who are dinged up. If you got a minor tweak somewhere, when you go to a place like Denver, the blood circulation isn't as easy out there. And, just because your hamstring might be at 85, by the time you land in Denver, you could be closer to 75. So there's just a lot of factors, and obviously the fact that Denver's playing well. But again, it's not the easiest trip in the NFL to make.
No, it's definitely not. And the home field advantage hasn't been quite as strong for the Broncos since they've been bad. But when the Broncos are good, man, that crowd gets loud and it's crazy in there. Communication was a bit of an issue, I would say, for the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. And I think that we could see that the crowd's going to try to get loud for DTR out there. There's no doubt about that. Where this fan base gets real loud, though, defensively for the Broncos is on third down. But I'm looking at the Cleveland Browns defense, the number 1 ranked third down defense in the entire NFL, going up against the Denver Broncos third down offense that has been really, I can't even say hit or miss, Jeff, because that almost implies a coin flip. The Broncos are averaging about 4 out of 10, conversions on third down these days. But the Browns are good at getting off the field on third down. The Denver Broncos not great at sustaining or extending drives, especially lately when they get into the red zone. Of course, they have had some exceptions late in games against Buffalo, against Minnesota, against Kansas City. There's been exceptions there throughout the course of the season, but I'd say largely when the Broncos get into third down situations, they're sticking themselves in really tough ones. They're getting behind the sticks with pre-snap penalties, or you're having issues with taking a sack on second down, or they're playing way too much horizontal football, trying to get the ball out to some quick screen plays to the wide receivers or the running backs, and they're getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage. The third down situations where the Broncos are on offense and the Browns are on defense, I'm going to be fascinated by. We saw Danielle Hunter coming off the edge for the Vikings this last week. He had a sack early in the game, but kind of disappeared throughout the rest of the game. Now, I'm not going to put any money on that happening with Myles Garrett being out there. Of course, we know him versus Garrett Bowles. The Broncos are going to need Quinn Bailey. They're going to need Chris Manhertz. They're going to need Samaje Perine, all these guys to do their help in pass protection. What has made if it's not just Myles Garrett, what has made that Browns third down defense so stellar this season?
Well, I mean, you go to it and, basically their four-man front for, third and long has been Myles Garrett. It's been Ogbo Okoronkwo. It has been Zadarius Smith. And believe it or not, it has been Maurice Hurst. And the thing is they can do anything with the four of them. So if they like a matchup with Myles Garrett on the inside, they can do that. So Ogbo can play outside. Zadarius Smith can play outside. If they like to bring two of them inside, Okoronkwo has always been a guy who pass rushes to the inside better than he pass rushes to the outside. So they can bring him inside. They can certainly do the same thing with Zadarius Smith. It's just a lot of rotational. And I think the thing is also with the cornerbacks that they have, as talented as the threesome of Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, and Greg Newsome are together, they really push each other. And, each one of them kind of gets fired up when the other one makes a play. And you get to a key situation in Baltimore with Denzel Ward's out of the game. Greg Newsome is now playing outside as opposed to playing nickel. The ball gets tapped in the air. Who's the one that makes the play? Returns it. Should have tied the game. Extra point wasn't made. It was Greg Newsome. They talked about it going into this year. Neither one of them had any interceptions. Martin Emerson already had two. Greg Newsome said, I trumped him because not only do I have one, but I got the pick six. So that should trump two interceptions. These guys really push each other. And I think the overall thing is just when you have that much talent together, a lot of guys are just waiting their opportunity. And look, if I play within myself, obviously, they haven't come at me. Eventually, they're going to call my number. They're going to come at me. I can't let the other 10 guys down, which is actually 15 and 16, because that's how many the Browns play on defense. And they all just wait for their opportunity and basically seize it. And it's not so much, the iron sharpening the iron. It's just the respect and, an understanding that everybody is pulling their weight. So when the opportunity comes and it's a huge play that you got to make, whether it's hanging on a tackle where you can't let this guy loose because he might get the next, 6 feet, 2 yards he needs for a first down. You got to hang on till your buddies get there. These guys have been able to do it. And, this team that has been historically really, really bad in the 7 years that I've been covering them on defense, it's not an issue anymore. It's just been an absolute joy to watch.
Well, what are going to be the non-negotiables in this game? What's going to happen for the Broncos to get to a fifth straight win, or for the Browns to go on the road and get to 8-3? We're going to talk about that coming up on this crossover Thursday edition. Locked On Broncos, Locked On Browns. As we jump into the fourth quarter of today's Crossover Thursday episode, want to say thank you and give another shout out to those of you that choose to make Locked On Broncos, Locked On Browns your first listen of the day every single day. We appreciate every single one of you. And thank you to all those that subscribe to the show. It means a lot to us, and we are grateful for it. Jeff, as we talk about keys to victory for this game for each team, I know every single week there's one key that I think for the Denver Broncos that I consistently bring up, but I want to hear from you first. I want you to set the tone here. What has to happen for the Cleveland Browns to go in and get to 8-3 against the Denver Broncos?
One of my bigger takeaways from Sunday night is, Minnesota probably got away from running the ball as much as maybe they should have, especially once, they had the lead. And you saw it was almost 5 yards per carry. Granted, that number was a little bit skewed with the Ty Chandler fake punt. But for the Browns, that's something that they didn't have necessarily last week. They had it really well against the Ravens. They didn't have it against Pittsburgh. Rookie quarterback, road start, difficult place to play. This is one where they got to kind of get back on it. Unless we even got weird, because Jerome Ford, unfortunately, has been the bell cow this year. And, obviously everybody expects for it to be Nick Chubb. And he did a really solid job. I mean, we're talking about 560 yards to this point. I mean, he does have an outside shot at a 1,000-yard season. But most of the second half, it was nothing but Kareem Hunt. And, Kareem Hunt is your tough runner. He is your short yardage guy. Kareem will always give up his body to get the extra yard. Whereas Jerome was more, your he would be your handcuff. He would be your next in line after Nick Chubb. And after a really strong week against the Baltimore Ravens, where it was 12 carries over 100 yards, you just didn't see him much. It was full participant in practice today, so that was the only thing I was wondering. Maybe, he's had a couple injuries this year. Did something flare up? But they need to get Jerome Ford going. I mean, you do not want to go into Denver, and you do not want to take DTR and say, hey, we're going to throw it 40 times. No, that is not a situation you want to put this rookie quarterback in. Plus, the other thing is you want to speed the game up, which is, again, why I think Minnesota maybe shot themselves in the foot a little bit. Once you got the lead, man, you got to start evaporating time on that clock. And obviously the best way to do that is with the running game. That's something the Browns are going to need, because the Browns are in this weird situation, ideally, where they prefer to have their defense on the field more than most likely their offense. And look, until everything evens out, everybody else would kind of agree with it. But they got to have some semblance of a run game. And then the other thing is you can start working play action off of that. And there's things they want to do with DTR as far as rollouts. It's something that plays better to his strengths, things he will be more comfortable with. But again, if you can't prove to anybody that you're going to be able to run the ball, nobody's going to fear the possibility of the ball being run.
And that's what the Broncos are really hoping, is to shut that down. It hasn't been the case over the course of the last handful of games, as you mentioned, against the Vikings. I think even if you take the Ty Chandler run out of it, like the Vikings, when they were running the ball, they were having a lot of success with it. And it required a couple of fumbles on their part to really get the Broncos, the offense, their extra possessions that they needed to win that game. The Broncos defense has to be better against the run against Cleveland. And I think that it really starts with getting off to a hot start offensively. It's not so much about them shutting down the run, but I think if the Broncos can get out to an early lead offensively, it's going to be like you mentioned with the Browns. You kind of want to hurry up and get to the point to where you're playing ball control in this game, where your defense is out there dictating the pace, dictating the whole mentality and mindset of this game for your team. So the Broncos, they're going to want to force the ball into DTR's hands as quickly as they possibly can. And that's going to require the offense being on point when they're on the script to open the game. And they're going to have to convert opportunities that they get into 6 points instead of 3. We've seen some really hairy, sticky situations where they probably could have beat the Bills and the Vikings by multiple touchdowns. They just couldn't score them. So until they absolutely needed to. So again, easier said than done against the number one, in my opinion, defense in the NFL. I know statistically in many categories they are number one. So I think it's easier said than done, but you want to get off to a hot start offensively, obviously, if you're the Denver Broncos, where you've had the opportunities in recent weeks, but you had the missed extra point against Buffalo that kind of cost you a little momentum. You had the turnover resulting in only 3 points early against Minnesota. Can you convert opportunities early on, whether it comes off a turnover or not, into 6 points? And that's a huge question mark for this Denver Broncos team, if they're going to be able to come away from this game with a victory and have a above 500 record for the first time since it's been a while, Jeff. Let's just put it that way. It's been a minute for the Denver Broncos there. So if they're going to get above 500, I think it starts with getting out to an early lead and forcing the ball into DTR's hands as a passer. Because like you mentioned, the Browns, they're going to want to run the ball and dictate the physicality of this game.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes the most sense. And, look, and I'm not saying that I don't think there's improvement to be had with DTR, but again, there's just a lot of circumstances here. And, for the Browns, this is, again, one of their remaining most difficult matchups over the last 7 games that they have here. And the other thing is, this is now back-to-back road games, obviously a travel out to Denver and even more difficult travel the following week. Although rumors are they're going to leave Denver and just go right to Los Angeles for the week, which would make sense. And we'll see the way that all plays out. But, this is, it's a Denver team, and, you're always worried about a hot team. Like everybody, oh, this team's good. I'm never worried about, teams and what their records are. Show me what you did over the last 4 or 5 games. When you talk about a team that's 4-0, that means they're playing a similar style right now to the Browns of, this week, this was what did it. This last week, it was this. And, just finding whatever way it is or whatever you can expose to, finding a way to make a difference and get yourself the W. That's going to be a key here, for either team. And obviously, the Browns, they've been hitting on all areas. Special teams has been good. And obviously, you get the thin air in Denver. It should aid their kicking game even further. Defense has been phenomenal. And just hoping that the offense can start to get better and better as the weeks go on behind, the arm of the rookie quarterback.
going to be a great matchup between two teams that, hey, they may want to play it a little bit like a Big Ten game here, Jeff. You might want to play some more ball control. Punting is maybe your friend in a game like this, and we'll see which team can come away with a victory. Can the Broncos win their 5th game in a row? Can the Browns get to 8-3? I'm looking forward to it. I know Jeff's looking forward to it, and we know that you listeners are looking forward to it as well. And we thank you so much again for listening. Locked On Broncos, Locked On Browns, and also Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's called Locked On Sports Today, and it's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single sports league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. We appreciate you so much, Broncos country, Browns fans. Glad you joined us today, and we'll see you next time.